in Australia, it is legal to end the life of a baby right up until birth. And these little babies have no voice and no one to speak for them. Today, I'm going to speak to a very brave mum whose baby was born at 24 weeks, and she's going to tell us what that was like. And that's today on the Dr. Jo Show. Thank you so much for coming in, Ashley. It's so lovely to meet you. And we actually just met at the rally in Sydney a week ago, and you came up to me and shared your story with me, and I just thought you have been through so much and you're very inspiring and courageous, so really appreciate you coming in and sharing it with all of us. Could you just tell us maybe about when you found out you were pregnant with Archie and how it unfolded for you?
Yeah, sure. So we've had a pretty difficult journey. I suppose my journey to motherhood has been quite difficult. Before Archie, I actually had a miscarriage. So when I was pregnant again and we found out that I was pregnant with Archie, we were so excited, nervous, but just really happy to have this little life inside me. And I suppose the pregnancy was uncomplicated. It was just a run-of-the-mill pregnancy, and it just kind of continued along until one day it wasn't.
Yeah, wow. And what was that day like, the day that you found out?
Yeah, so basically I just had cramping that started one night, and then I woke up and it was about 4 a.m. and I had really heavy bleeding everywhere, and we just rushed straight to emergency. I was 23 weeks and 6 days pregnant, which is considered 1 day before the medical age of viability. And when we got to the hospital and we were rushed up to the maternity ward, and I was already 4 centimeters dilated. And they said this baby is coming, and it's too soon, but this baby is coming.
So what happened next?
So I was at the hospital in the maternity ward. I was 23 weeks and 6 days, and I was 4 centimeters dilated. And they said, this baby is coming. It's too early, but this baby is coming. And I was terrified. I just wanted to keep my baby who'd been growing inside me safe, and I wanted to try and hold on for as long as I could. They gave me medication to try and stop the contractions, to keep him inside just for a little bit longer, because what they actually do is they give you steroids to help with the lung development when you're at that point. And one thing the doctor said, which I found incredibly confronting, was he's 23 weeks and 6 days, so therefore resuscitation is optional and at the request of the parents, as compared to if it was past 24 weeks. And I said, I want you to do everything that you can to help our son survive.
Wow. So in that moment when just your world is crashing because this little baby is coming 16 weeks early, you also have to advocate for them to get medical care. Is that what you felt?
Yes, and it was one of those comments that just stuck so starkly in my mind, because how could I not want my precious baby to have the best chance? So we were in hospital, and I managed to get Archie through to 24 weeks and 1 day.
Wow.
So another 2 days, which did make a difference because the steroids had a chance to take effect. And then basically I was 7 centimeters dilated, and he had turned around into a breech position. And my obstetrician actually said to me, look, a lot of people would just choose to do a natural birth now, but if you do that in breech with a baby of his size and his fragility, he'll die basically. So if you wanted the best chance for him to live, then you should have a C-section. So I was rushed into an emergency C-section.
Wow.
And an hour later I had this beautiful little baby, and he came out crying and breathing by himself. And it was really incredible, because I think it doesn't quite hit you how real your baby is until they're born. And only a few weeks before, we'd seen the 20-week ultrasound photos, and they were so vivid and so clear. And then suddenly we had this baby at 24 weeks who was fully, perfectly formed.
Wow.
he basically just looked like a really miniature full-term baby that was a little bit less chubby.
Yeah. How big was he, like size-wise? Is he the size of like, like a hand or?
It's actually really hard for me to say because I didn't get a chance to hold him and we spent hardly any time together, but he was 700 grams. So if you think about that, he was about a quarter of the size of a normal baby, but he was a perfect little person. He had all his fingers, all his toes, absolutely everything, just perfect.
So was he rushed to the NICU after the birth?
He was. He was rushed to the NICU and Jay went with him and he was put on some breathing support and they kind of did all the tests and monitoring him and he was pretty perfect. So we were feeling incredibly like hopeful about his survival and what our life with this tiny, beautiful little baby boy would be like.
And what happened?
So basically, Jay had a positive COVID test and was asked to leave the hospital and was told he couldn't be there. And I had a couple of negative tests, but I was put in an isolation room and told I couldn't see Archie. So
this is in the middle of the pandemic?
It was in the end of 2022, so a little bit past the pandemic.
But they were still pretty crazy about COVID.
Yes, they were still pretty crazy about it. And basically he had a couple of like complications and they wanted to transport Archie to a different hospital. And I think what happened when he was being transported is there was like a breathing tube in place and they went over a bump basically in the road with the ambulance and it knocked something. And then when he got to the other hospital about an hour later, he had like a massive internal bleed. And after trying to resuscitate him for about an hour and a half, he passed away.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's a pretty confronting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know how that goes. How you cope. Like how?
I think I'm here today and I'm here talking about it because little babies like Archie don't necessarily have a voice.
Yeah.
And the best thing that I can do for him and his legacy is to say, hey, like this is what a baby at 24 weeks looks like, sounds like, is like. And it's really changed my life. It's been a life-altering experience. And yes, it's terribly sad and I miss him all the time and I think what would our life look like if he was here with us? But you can only do what you can do and what I can do is share his story.
Yeah. Do you have any videos of him or anything that we can see? Because I feel like I know we're not going to talk about abortion today, but you obviously know that the work I do is really trying to raise awareness about this issue. And in Australia, there's close to 1,000 babies every year who are Archie's age or older who have their hearts injected with poison and then they're delivered dead deliberately, And I think those babies don't have a voice. And
I can't imagine that because every fibre of my being as a mother just wanted to fight so hard for him at every point. When we found out that I was in labour, when he was born, I think it's such a powerful thing. A mother's love is such a powerful thing. And it's like the more you see and the more you know, like the more you just see that it's just a tiny little person that needs some help.
Yeah, let's look at a little video of Archie, shall we? Have you got your phone?
Sure. So this is a video of him crying. That was just when he was first born. And actually, this is quite amazing. So when he was first born, he had an APGAR score, the score they give babies at birth, of about 5. So it was quite low. Okay. And it was like he was struggling, but within a couple of minutes, he had an APGAR score of 9.
Wow.
So within 5 minutes, his APGAR score was 9, which is like the highest score any baby can have. So he was breathing, had reflexes, responding to everything just as well as the best full-term baby.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is extraordinary.
That is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And so because he was with all of that stuff around him to support him, you never really got to hold him. Is that right?
Yes, and I think more than that, I wasn't even allowed to be in the same room as him due to these restrictions. So, of the day and a half that he lived, I was sitting by his crib for about an hour of it. And when he died, I was at a different hospital, and Jay wasn't with him either. So basically, the only time we got to really like see him, hold him, and be together as a family was about 2 hours after he had died.
Oh my goodness. Do you feel angry?
I think it's hard not to feel some anger, but I also think that anger is not a particularly helpful emotion, and I would rather just channel myself into sharing his story.
That's really beautiful and brave of you. I feel like that is a much more, it's a better thing to do, isn't it, than dwelling in that anger. But I can understand the heartbreak.
Yeah, it did. It really, really broke my heart. And I think it's only started to put it back together a little bit as we've been able to have another little baby, which was actually my 4th pregnancy. So I had 2 miscarriages and Archie at 24 weeks. And I think such a difficult journey just shows me the value of every little life, whether it was my baby who died at 6 weeks, my baby that died at 9 weeks, or my baby that was born and died at 24 weeks. It just gives me such a huge appreciation for human life in all its forms at every point. And I'm so, so thankful that I now have this beautiful little 5-month-old baby, Olivia Grace, with me now.
Yeah. And what would your advice be to other mothers who might be watching you and they've got some diagnosis at that 20-week scan that maybe they've been told their baby's likely not going to survive or has some kind of disability, or maybe they're feeling like they can't cope? You've been through so much, which speaks to the resilience of the human spirit. But what would your advice be to other mums who might be struggling?
I think it's really to live in the present and do what you can do and just take it moment by moment. And I am so thankful for the day and a half that Archie was here with us outside of the womb, but also the 24 weeks that he spent inside me. And I think that it's just finding a way to appreciate each moment and the value of that, and surrendering to this idea that it's not always going to be your perfect plan. And for me, that wasn't the case. Like, it wasn't in my control and it wasn't how I had planned things, but you're given what you're given. And I was given this beautiful little baby, even if it was just for those 24 weeks and the little bit that he was here with us.
Yeah. And what about your marriage and the toll? Does it take a toll, or does good come out of it? What does that look like for you guys?
Absolutely. I feel like we have just been through the biggest storm, and it has been really challenging, but we've also really grown in our marriage. And for us, I actually found out I was pregnant for the first time on the last day of our honeymoon.
Wow.
And then essentially we had a miscarriage, and just at the same time as my dad had a terminal cancer diagnosis. And then we had Archie, and then Archie died. And then I had another miscarriage, and then my dad died.
Wow.
And then, so we've really been through a lot in our first 3 years of marriage, but we are in it together. And I think that if you're in it together and you have compassion for each other and you're kind.
You've written a book about Archie. Could you tell us a little bit about the experience of writing that book? And hopefully people can buy that book at some point. Like, we'll have to promote that. But tell us about writing Archie's story.
Yes, so I am a debut author, and I've written a book called Dear Baby Archie, which is a beautiful story, also very sad, but about Archie and his life and the fight to survive that we had and that he had, and to be together as a family. And I think that sharing stories like that is incredibly powerful, because many babies and many mothers and many families go through really challenging situations, and talking about it and being open about it and showing that you can deal with the cards you've been dealt is really something worth sharing.
Do you find it hard when you scroll social media? Because often the stories are typically miracle stories. So the baby is born at 23, 24 weeks but survives. Or, there's always like a happy ending typically when you look at the scroll. Do you find that hard?
Yes, and I think that it has been a real journey, because there is so much grief and sadness, and you kind of think, why me? Why my baby? Why wasn't he one of the ones that that lived? But over time, I've kind of got to a place of acceptance and how can I take this and take Archie's story and take his impact on me and use it for good.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us.